Carl Murray's heart pounds as he steps onto the gleaming conference platform, acutely aware that Earth's future in the cosmos hinges on his next words. The Andromedan homeworld's twin suns cast an otherworldly glow through the chamber's crystalline dome, illuminating the sea of alien faces before him. He clears his throat, ready to present humanity's case for admission into the Galactic Federation. "Esteemed delegates," Carl begins, his voice steady despite the tension crackling through the air. "Earth stands ready to contribute our unique technological innovations to the galactic community." As he launches into his carefully prepared speech, Carl's gaze sweeps across the assembly. His eyes lock with those of Belle, an Andromedan diplomat whose ethereal beauty momentarily steals his breath. Her silvery skin shimmers with an intensity that seems to pulse in time with his words. Carl falters for a moment, thrown off by the obvious fascination in Belle's wide, opalescent eyes. Forcing himself to focus, Carl continues his presentation, detailing Earth's advancements in quantum computing and zero-point energy. Yet he can't help but notice Belle's growing agitation. She shifts in her seat, her normally graceful movements becoming jerky and uncontrolled. A soft, pulsating glow emanates from her skin, growing brighter with each passing minute. Whispers ripple through the Andromedan contingent. Carl catches fragments of harsh alien speech. Deviant, species traitor. The hostility in their tone is unmistakable. He redoubles his efforts to steer the conversation back to Earth's strategic importance, but Belle's increasingly obvious arousal derails his every attempt. The Andromedan chief negotiator, Zorn, rises abruptly, his face a mask of barely contained disgust. "We will take a recess," he announces, glaring at Belle. "This unseemly display cannot be allowed to continue." As the delegates file out, Carl gathers his notes, his mind racing. What just happened? How has his carefully planned presentation devolved into this mess? He's about to leave when a shimmering figure blocks his path. Belle stands before him, her iridescent skin pulsing with an intensity that makes Carl's hair stand on end. Her eyes, huge and luminous, bore into his with an almost painful intensity. "Human," she says, her voice a breathy whisper that sends shivers down Carl's spine. "Why do you make me tingle down there?" Carl's mouth goes dry. He's acutely aware of the Andromedan security detail glaring at them from across the room. This is bad. This is very, very bad. He stammers something unintelligible and practically runs from the conference hall, Belle's question echoing in his ears. Later that evening, as Carl paces his quarters, trying to make sense of the day's events, his comm unit chimes. The message from his superiors is terse and to the point. Belle's apparent attraction to him has sparked a diplomatic incident. The Andromedan government is threatening to veto Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation, unless Carl can correct Belle's inappropriate feelings. Carl sinks into his chair, the weight of humanity's galactic aspirations settling heavily on his shoulders. He has to fix this somehow, but as he contemplates the complex web of Andromedan politics and physiology, he must now navigate. He can't shake the memory of Belle's shimmering skin or the way her gaze made his pulse race. How can he resolve the situation when he's not even sure he wants to? Carl's mind raced as he contemplated his next move. The weight of Earth's galactic aspirations pressed down on him, but he couldn't ignore the electric thrill that coursed through him at the memory of Belle's shimmering skin and captivating gaze. With a deep breath, he made his decision. The following morning, Carl sent a discreet message to Belle, requesting a private meeting in the secluded Zenovian gardens within the Andromedan diplomatic complex. As he waited among the alien flora, his heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Belle appeared, her silvery skin pulsating with an intense iridescent glow that outshone even the bioluminescent plants surrounding them. Carl's breath caught in his throat as she approached, her opalescent eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin tingle. "Human," Belle said, her voice a melodic whisper. "You wish to speak with me?" Carl nodded, struggling to find his voice. "Belle, we need to address what happened yesterday. The reaction you had during my presentation." "It was not just during your presentation," Belle interrupted, her skin flashing with embarrassment. "Your very presence affects me in ways I cannot explain or control." Carl's brow furrowed. "But why? What is it about humans that causes this reaction in you? Belle's luminescence pulsed erratically as she explained. It appears that humans possess a unique pheromone, undetectable to most species, but irresistible to Andromedans. Your scent, it awakens something primal within us. The revelation hit Carl like a bolt of lightning. That could explain the tension between humans and Andromedans during previous negotiations, he mused aloud. But how can we persistence this? Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation hangs in the balance. Belle's eyes shimmered with commitment. There may be a solution. Dr. Zelana, our chief xenobiologist, might be able to help. Without hesitation, they made their way to Dr. Zelana's laboratory. The xenobiologist, a tall Andromedan with iridescent scales and multifaceted eyes, listened intently as Belle explained the situation. After running a series of quick tests, Dr. Zelana confirmed Belle's theory. The human pheromone is indeed potent, she said, her voice a low hum. I can synthesize a temporary hormonal treatment to suppress your reaction, Belle. However, there is a significant side effect. Belle leaned forward, her skin rippling with anxiety. What kind of side effect? Dr. Zelana's eyes flickered with concern. Once the treatment wears off, you will experience an intense mating urge. It could be overwhelming. Carl watched as Belle processed this information, her luminescence fluctuating rapidly. After a moment of tense silence, Belle squared her shoulders. I'll do it, for the sake of the negotiations. As Dr. Zelana prepared the treatment, Carl noticed a shadow pass by the laboratory window. Outside, Krell, a stern-faced Andromedan security officer, watched them with narrowed eyes before disappearing down the corridor. The following days saw a marked improvement in the negotiations. Belle maintained her composure during Carl's presentations, and the whispers about the human problem subsided. However, Carl couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He often caught glimpses of Krell lurking in the shadows, his piercing gaze following Carl's every move. As the crucial voting session on Earth's admission approached, Carl noticed Belle's discomfort increasing. Her skin flickered more frequently, and she seemed to be struggling to focus. With a sinking feeling, Carl realized the treatment was wearing off faster than anticipated. In the middle of the voting session, Belle suddenly stood up, her skin beginning to glow with an intensity that rivaled the twin suns. "Excuse me," she mumbled, hurrying out of the chamber. Concern overrode Carl's better judgment, and he followed her, acutely aware of Krell's eyes boring into his back as he left. Belle led him through a maze of crystalline corridors, her pace quickening with each step. Finally, she ducked into a hidden alcove, pulling Carl in after her. Her skin pulsed with a blinding radiance, and her breath came in short gasps. "Belle, what's wrong?" Carl asked, though he already knew the answer. "The treatment," Belle panted, her eyes wild with barely suppressed desire. "It's wearing off. I can't control it anymore." Before Carl could respond, Belle pressed herself against him, her skin searing hot even through his clothes. Her lips found his, and Carl's world exploded into a kaleidoscope of sensation. For a moment, Carl lost himself in the kiss, his body responding to Belle's with an intensity that shocked him. But then reality came crashing back. The negotiations, Earth's future, the consequences of this moment. With Herculean effort, Carl gently pushed Belle away. "We can't," he gasped, his voice rough with desire and regret. "The negotiations—" A low chuckle interrupted them. Krell stepped out from behind a crystal pillar, a recording device in his hand, and a triumphant grin on his face. "Well, well," he sneered. "What an interesting development. I'm sure Chief Negotiator Zorn will find this enlightening." As Krell slipped away, Carl's stomach dropped. He turned to Belle, whose glow had dimmed to a faint flicker, her eyes wide with horror. "What have we done?" she whispered. Carl's mind raced, searching for a solution, but as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor, he realized that the true test of his diplomatic skills was only just beginning. Carl's heart pounded as he heard the approaching footsteps. He turned to Belle, her fading glow a stark reminder of their predicament. "We need to move," he whispered urgently. They slipped out of the alcove, only to find themselves face to face with Dr. Zelana. The xenobiologist's multifaceted eyes darted between them, her iridescent scales shimmering with agitation. "Quick," Dr. Zylana hissed. "Follow me." As they hurried through the crystalline corridors, Dr. Zylana explained in hushed tones, "Krell has evidence of your encounter. He's on his way to Zorn now." Carl's stomach dropped. "We have to stop him." "Already taken care of," Dr. Zylana interrupted, her voice tinged with pride. "I've initiated a facility-wide quarantine. It should buy us some time." No sooner had the words left her mouth than a piercing alarm echoed through the complex. Crimson light bathed the corridors as security barriers slammed into place. "Attention all personnel," a robotic voice announced. "A xenobiological contamination has been detected. Please remain in your current locations until further notice." Carl watched as confusion and panic spread across the faces of delegates and staff members trapped in various rooms and hallways. He turned to Dr. Zylana, a question forming on his lips, but she silenced him with a sharp look. "Not here," she whispered, ushering them into an empty laboratory. Once inside, Belle collapsed into a chair, her skin pulsing weakly. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "The treatment, it shouldn't have worn off so quickly." Dr. Zylana's gaze softened as she approached Belle. "The intensity of your reaction to Carl was unexpected. It accelerated the metabolization of the suppressant." Carl watched as Dr. Zylana examined Belle, her long fingers dancing over various instruments. Suddenly, the xenobiologist froze, her eyes widening in astonishment. "This is impossible," she breathed. Belle sat up straighter, alarm evident in her opalescent eyes. "What is it? What's wrong?" Dr. Zylana shook her head, her scales shimmering with excitement. "Nothing's wrong. In fact, this could change everything." She turned to Carl, her voice filled with wonder. "Your encounter with Belle has triggered a physiological change in her cellular structure, her bioluminescence. It's stabilized." Carl blinked, trying to process the information. "What does that mean?" "It means," Dr. Zylana explained, her words tumbling out in a rush, "that instead of the erratic pulsing we typically see in aroused Andromedans, Belle's skin now emits a steady, controlled glow. This is unprecedented in our species." Belle held up her hands, marveling at the soft, constant light emanating from her skin. "How is this possible?" Dr. Zylana's multifaceted eyes gleamed with scientific curiosity. "I have a theory, but we'll need to run more tests to confirm it. However, if I'm right, this could have far-reaching implications for both our species." The quarantine alarm abruptly ceased, startling them all. Dr. Zylana's scales rippled with concern. "The lockdown's been lifted. We need to get back to the negotiation chamber before Krell reaches Zorn." They raced through the now bustling corridors, dodging confused delegates and harried staff members. As they approached the chamber, Carl's mind whirled with possibilities. He knew he had to act fast to salvage the situation. Bursting into the room, they found the delegates in a state of agitated confusion. Zorn stood at the center, his face contorted with frustration. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing as they fell on Carl and Belle. Carl stepped forward, his heart racing but his voice steady. "Esteemed delegates," he began, "I apologize for the delay, but I believe we've made a discovery that could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies relations." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Carl pressed on, gesturing to Belle. "As you can see, Ambassador Belle has undergone a unique physiological change. This transformation, triggered by human-Andromedan interaction, represents an unprecedented opportunity for scientific advancement and closer ties between our species." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of excited chatter and skeptical muttering. Carl caught sight of Krell pushing his way through the crowd, a data chip clutched in his hand. But before the security officer could reach Zorn, Dr. Zylana stepped up to the podium. "As chief xenobiologist," she announced, her voice cutting through the noise, "I propose the formation of a joint human-Andromedan research team to study this phenomenon. The potential benefits to both our species could be immeasurable." Several influential delegates voiced their immediate support, their eyes alight with the possibilities. Even Zorn seemed intrigued, stroking his chin thoughtfully. Krell, seeing his opportunity slipping away, shouted over the din. "This is an outrage. These humans are corrupting our people, degrading our very biology." His words struck a chord with some delegates, who nodded in agreement. The room began to divide, with supporters and opponents of human Andromedan cooperation forming distinct factions. Carl watched as the situation teetered on a knife's edge. He knew that the fate of Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation now hinged on proving that closer ties between humans and Andromedans could be beneficial rather than harmful. As the debate raged on, Belle stepped forward, her steady glow captivating the assembly. "I volunteer," she said, her voice clear and resolute, "to be the first subject in this joint research initiative." Carl's breath caught in his throat. He realized that Belle was putting herself at risk, offering to be examined and studied to prove the value of human Andromedan relations. The gravity of her sacrifice wasn't lost on the delegates, many of whom fell silent in admiration. Zorn raised his hand, quieting the room. "This is indeed an unexpected development," he said, his eyes flickering between Carl, Belle, and Dr. Zilana. "Perhaps we should consider a brief recess to discuss the implications of this new information." As the delegates began to file out, Carl caught Belle's eye. Her steady glow seemed to pulse slightly brighter as she gave him a small, determined smile. He returned it, aware that their actions had set in motion events that could change the course of galactic history. But as Krell's hostile glare bored into him from across the room, Carl knew that the real challenge was just beginning. They would have to navigate a minefield of political opposition, scientific uncertainty, and personal consequences to secure Earth's place in the Galactic Federation and unlock the mysteries of human Andromedan compatibility. With a deep breath, Carl steeled himself for the battles ahead, knowing that the fate of two species now rested on their shoulders. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him as he faced the challenges ahead. In the days that followed, Carl, Belle, and Dr. Zilana threw themselves into their research. They converted a section of the diplomatic complex into a state-of-the-art laboratory, filled with gleaming biomedical scanners and holographic displays. Belle's skin continued to emit a soft, steady glow, a constant reminder of the unprecedented change she had undergone. As Carl adjusted a microscope, he glanced at Belle. Her opalescent eyes were fixed on a holographic display of her DNA structure, her brow furrowed in concentration. Dr. Zilana's many-faceted eyes darted between multiple screens, her iridescent scales shimmering with excitement. "Carl, Belle, look at this," Dr. Zilana called, her voice tinged with awe. She manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a specific section of Belle's DNA. "Do you see these markers? They're human in origin." Carl leaned in, his breath catching in his throat. The implications were staggering. "Are you saying that Belle's DNA has incorporated human genetic material?" Dr. Zilana nodded, her scales rippling with enthusiasm. "Not only that, but the integration appears to be stable and potentially beneficial. This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies genetics." Belle touched the holographic display, her fingers passing through the representation of her altered DNA. "What does this mean for me? For us?" Before Dr. Zilana could answer, the lab door slid open with a hiss. A group of aliens entered, their varied anatomies a testament to the diversity of the Galactic Federation. At their head was a tall, willowy being with crystalline skin that refracted light in dazzling patterns. "Greetings," the crystalline being said, its voice resonating like wind chimes. "I am Zarthok, head of the Galactic Federation's Scientific Council. We've been sent to assist with your research." Carl straightened, acutely aware of the magnitude of this moment. "We're honored by your presence, Zarthok. Your expertise will be invaluable." As the scientific team integrated into the lab, Carl noticed a commotion outside. Through the transparent walls, he saw a group of Andromedans holding signs with anti-human slogans. At their center stood Krell, his face contorted with anger as he shouted into a communication device. Dr. Zilana followed Carl's gaze, her scales darkening with concern. "Krell's been rallying support against us. He's convinced several key delegates that humans pose a threat to Andromedan genetic purity." Carl's mind focused. "We need to focus on our work. The truth will speak for itself." Days blurred into weeks as they delved deeper into the mysteries of human Andromedan compatibility. Belle's enhanced physiology became more pronounced. She could lift objects that would have been impossible before, and her cognitive abilities showed marked improvement. One evening, as Carl was reviewing data, his communication device buzzed. The message made his blood run cold. Ambassador Reyes, this is a direct order from Earth Command. Your primary objective is to secure Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation. All other concerns, including your personal involvement with the Andromedan subject or genetic research, are secondary. Comply immediately. Carl's hands shook as he set down the device. He looked across the lab at Belle, who was deep in conversation with Zarthok. The soft glow of her skin seemed to pulse in time with his racing heart. How could he choose between his duty to humanity and the groundbreaking discovery that could change everything? His internal struggle was interrupted by a piercing alarm. Red lights flashed as the facility's emergency system activated. Dr. Zylana rushed to a control panel, her scales paling with fear. "We've been breached," she shouted over the alarm. "Someone's released a pathogen into the air filtration system." Carl's eyes widened in horror as he saw Belle collapse, her skin flickering erratically. Other Andromedan staff members began to show similar symptoms. Through the chaos, he caught a glimpse of a group fleeing the scene. Radical Andromedan purists, their faces twisted with hate. As Dr. Zylana and the scientific team scrambled to contain the outbreak, Carl rushed to Belle's side. Her skin was hot to the touch, her breath coming in ragged gasps. He cradled her head, his mind racing. "Stay with me, Belle," he whispered, his voice cracking. "We'll find a way to beat this." As he held her, Carl noticed something strange. While the other Andromedans were succumbing to the virus, he felt fine. Could his human physiology be the key to their salvation? With renewed commitment, Carl called out to Dr. Zylana. "I think I might be immune to this virus. We need to synthesize a cure using my genetic material." Dr. Zylana's eyes lit up with hope. "That could work, but we'll need to act fast. The Security Council hearing is in less than 48 hours. And if we can't contain this outbreak—" Carl nodded, understanding the unspoken consequences. As he rolled up his sleeve for Dr. Zylana to take a blood sample, he looked down at Belle's weakened form. In that moment, he knew that the fate of 2 species, and perhaps the entire Galactic Federation, rested on what they discovered in the next 2 days. The lab erupted into a flurry of activity as Carl's blood was analyzed and potential cures were rapidly synthesized and tested. Time seemed to stretch and compress, measured not in hours but in the steady decline of Belle's vital signs and the ticking clock counting down to the Security Council hearing. As the first rays of the twin suns peeked over the horizon, casting a warm glow through the lab's windows, Carl found himself at a crossroads. The preliminary results of his blood analysis were promising, but they needed more time to develop a stable cure, time they didn't have. With the weight of worlds on his shoulders, Carl prepared to make a decision that could change everything. Carl took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. He turned to Dr. Zylana, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to synthesize a cure using my genetic material. It's our best chance." Dr. Zylana nodded, her scales rippling with tenacity. "Let's get started immediately." As Carl rolled up his sleeve for the blood draw, he glanced at Belle's weakened form. Her once vibrant glow had dimmed significantly, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The sight galvanized him, pushing away any lingering doubts. The lab erupted into a flurry of activity. Carl's blood was quickly analyzed, its unique properties mapped and studied. Dr. Zylana and her team worked tirelessly, their movements a blur as they raced against time. Hours passed in a haze of data analysis and experimental trials. Carl found himself alternating between assisting the research team and sitting by Belle's side, monitoring her deteriorating condition. Her skin, once shimmering with an otherworldly light, now appeared dull and ashen. As the first rays of the twin suns peeked over the horizon, casting a warm glow through the lab's windows, Dr. Zylana approached Carl with a mixture of hope and trepidation in her eyes. "We've made progress," she said, her voice low. "But we need more time to develop a stable cure. Time we don't have." Carl's heart sank. He glanced at the clock, acutely aware of the rapidly approaching Security Council hearing. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, the fate of two species hanging in the balance. Before he could respond, the lab door slid open with a hiss. Dr. Zorax, a renowned Centaurian virologist, strode in, followed by a team of medical professionals. The Galactic Federation had dispatched them in response to the escalating crisis. Dr. Zorax, a tall, slender being with 4 arms and iridescent skin, quickly assessed the situation. "Brief me on your findings," he commanded, his voice a melodious trill. As Dr. Xylana brought the Centaurian up to speed, Carl noticed a commotion outside the lab. Through the transparent walls, he saw Krell addressing a group of agitated delegates. The security officer's face was contorted with rage as he gesticulated wildly, pointing accusingly towards the lab. Carl's stomach churned as he realized the implications. Krell was using the outbreak to further his anti-human agenda, likely spreading rumors of a human bioweapon. The political situation was deteriorating rapidly. Turning back to the research team, Carl found Dr. Zorax bent over a holographic display of Belle's DNA. The virologist's eyes widened in surprise. "This is remarkable," Dr. Zorax exclaimed. "The virus isn't just targeting the altered physiology, it's attempting to erase the human genetic markers integrated into her DNA." The revelation hit Carl like a physical blow. "Are you saying this virus was engineered specifically to undo the effects of human Andromedan genetic exchange?" Dr. Zorax nodded grimly. "It appears so. This changes our approach entirely." The team refocused their efforts, now working to develop a treatment that would not only counter the virus, but also stabilize the human Andromedan genetic bond. Carl, driven by a mix of desperation and tenacity, volunteered for a series of experimental procedures to harvest more of his resistant genetic material. As Carl underwent the first procedure, he felt a strange sensation coursing through his body. His skin tingled, and his senses seemed to sharpen. Dr. Zelana, monitoring his vitals, gasped in surprise. "Carl, your skin, it's starting to glow," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Looking down at his arms, Carl saw a faint, Andromedan-like luminescence beginning to emanate from his skin. He felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. What did this mean for him, for the future of human-Andromedan relations? As the research team worked feverishly, Carl's communication device buzzed insistently. With a sense of dread, he read the message from Earth Command, reminding him of his primary mission to secure Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation. The pressure from all sides was mounting. Belle's condition continued to worsen. Krell's propaganda was gaining traction, and now his own government was questioning his priorities. Carl knew he had to make a decision that could change the course of galactic history. With drive hardening in his chest, Carl approached Dr. Xylana and Dr. Zorax. "I want to propose something," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. "Use me as a test subject for the experimental cure." The two scientists exchanged worried glances. "Carl, the risks," Dr. Xylana began, but Carl cut her off. "We don't have time for cautious approaches," he insisted. "If we can demonstrate the beneficial aspects of human Andromedan compatibility in my own body, we might be able to counter Krell's propaganda and sway the Security Council." After a moment of tense silence, Dr. Zorax nodded reluctantly. "It's risky, but it might be our best chance." As the team prepared the serum, combining the antiviral properties of Carl's resistant genes with stabilizing elements, Carl took a moment to look at Belle. Her once vibrant form lay still, her glow barely visible. He silently promised her that he would do whatever it took to save her and secure a future where their peoples could coexist. The injection of the serum felt like liquid fire coursing through Carl's veins. His body reacted intensely, his skin's glow intensifying to a brilliant radiance. Suddenly, vivid mental flashes assaulted his senses. He saw fragmented memories, strange alien landscapes, unfamiliar faces, experiences that couldn't be his own. As Carl gasped for breath, struggling to process the flood of foreign memories, an alarm blared through the facility. Dr. Zalana rushed to a nearby console, her scales paling in fear. "We have intruders," she announced, her voice tight with worry. "The radical Andromedan purists who released the virus, they've infiltrated the diplomatic complex. They're heading for the medical bay." Carl pushed himself up, still reeling from the effects of the treatment. He knew what he had to do. Despite the protests of Dr. Zylana and Dr. Zorax, he stood on shaky legs, feeling a new strength beginning to course through his altered body. "I have to stop them," Carl said, his voice filled with a persistence that surprised even him. "Keep working on mass-producing the cure. I'll buy you the time you need." As Carl moved towards the exit, preparing to confront the purists and protect Bell and the other affected Andromedans, he felt the weight of multiple worlds on his shoulders. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of those infected, but the future of human Andromedan relations and Earth's place in the galactic community. With one last glance at Bell's unconscious form, Carl stepped out of the lab and into the chaotic corridors of the diplomatic complex, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With his heart pounding and muscles tensed, Carl raced through the corridors of the diplomatic complex. His newly enhanced physiology surged with unfamiliar power, propelling him forward with unprecedented speed and agility. As he approached the medical bay, Carl's heightened senses picked up the sound of struggle. He rounded the corner to find 5 Andromedan purists attempting to breach the security protocols. Their faces were contorted with fanatical drive as they worked to override the door controls. Without hesitation, Carl sprang into action. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to close the distance in a heartbeat, catching the first purist off guard with a swift strike. The attacker crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The other 4 turned to face him, their eyes widening in surprise at his sudden appearance. Carl's body moved with fluid grace as he engaged 2 more purists simultaneously. His strikes landed with precision and force, quickly subduing them. However, the remaining 2 attackers proved more formidable. As Carl squared off against them, he noticed subtle differences in their movements, a fluidity and strength that matched his own. These purists had undergone their own biological enhancements. The fight intensified as Carl found himself evenly matched. Blows were exchanged at lightning speed, each combatant testing the limits of their augmented abilities. Carl's skin began to pulse with an intense glow, his body reacting to the strain of the battle. As he narrowly dodged a vicious strike, Carl felt a surge of energy coursing through him. Acting on instinct, he channeled this power outward. A blinding flash erupted from his body, momentarily disorienting his opponents. Seizing the advantage, Carl pressed forward. With a series of precise strikes, he incapacitated the final 2 purists just as security forces arrived on the scene. "Secure these attackers," Carl ordered, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "I need to check on the patients." Without waiting for a response, he rushed into the medical bay. His eyes immediately found Bell, her form lying still on a nearby bed. Her once vibrant glow had dimmed to a faint flicker. Carl moved to her side, taking her hand in his. As their skin made contact, he felt a powerful surge of energy flow between them. To his amazement, Bell's glow began to strengthen, her vital signs stabilizing before his eyes. Dr. Zylana and Dr. Zorax burst into the room, their faces a mixture of concern and curiosity. They watched in awe as Carl's touch seemed to revitalize Bell. "Incredible," Dr. Zorax exclaimed, his forearms working furiously to record data on a holographic display. "Carl, your enhanced physiology appears to be acting as a stabilizing force for Bell's altered genetic structure." Dr. Zylana nodded in agreement, her scales shimmering with excitement. "This could be the breakthrough we've been searching for. Direct physical contact between compatible human and Andromedan individuals might be key to accelerating the healing process and strengthening the genetic bond." As they spoke, Bell's eyes fluttered open. She looked up at Carl, a weak smile forming on her face. "You came back for me," she whispered. Carl squeezed her hand gently. "Always," he replied, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. Dr. Zylana turned to address the medical staff. "We need to modify our treatment plan immediately. Begin pairing affected Andromedans with compatible human volunteers from the diplomatic staff. Monitor their interactions closely and record all data." The medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity as the new protocol was implemented. Human volunteers were quickly screened and matched with Andromedan patients. Within hours, the results were undeniable. Affected Andromedans showed significant signs of recovery. their conditions stabilizing and improving under the influence of their human counterparts. As news of the successful treatment spread, the atmosphere in the diplomatic complex began to shift. Delegates who had been skeptical of human-Andromedan relations now found themselves reconsidering their positions. Conversations in the corridors and meeting rooms buzzed with excitement about the potential benefits of closer ties between the two species. Carl, still adjusting to his new abilities, found himself at the center of attention. Many delegates sought him out, eager to learn more about his experience and the implications of human-Andromedan compatibility. As he fielded questions and shared his story, Carl noticed Krell skulking on the periphery of the gathered crowd. The security officer's face was twisted with awe-inspiring rage, his anti-human agenda crumbling before his eyes. Determined to seize the momentum, Dr. Zylana requested an emergency session with the Galactic Federation's Scientific Council. She presented the latest research findings, showcasing the positive outcomes of human-Andromedan genetic compatibility. As you can see, Dr. Zylana concluded, gesturing to the holographic displays, the potential benefits are extraordinary. Enhanced healing abilities, improved cognitive functions, and even resistance to certain types of biological attacks. This research could revolutionize galactic medicine and interspecies relations. The scientific council members murmured among themselves, clearly impressed by the data. After a brief deliberation, they issued a formal recommendation to the Security Council, advocating for the expansion and full support of the Human Andromedan Research Project. As Carl left the council chamber, feeling a sense of hope for the future, he was confronted by a livid Krell. The security officer's eyes blazed with fury as he stepped into Carl's path. "This isn't over, human," Krell snarled. "You may have them fooled for now, but I know the truth. Your kind will never be welcome here." Before Carl could respond, Krell stormed off, leaving him with a sense of unease. He knew the fight for Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation was far from won, and Krell would not give up easily. Returning to the medical bay, Carl found Belle sitting up in her bed, her glow now restored to its former brilliance. As their eyes met, he felt a strange sensation, a warmth that seemed to flow between them, carrying with it fragments of thoughts and emotions. "Carl," Belle said, her voice tinged with wonder, "I can feel you, in my mind. How is this possible?" He took her hand, marveling at the connection between them. "I don't know," he replied, "but I think we're just beginning to understand what our bond truly means." As they sat together, exploring this new facet of their relationship, neither of them noticed Dr. Zorax watching from across the room, his eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity and a hint of concern. The implications of this deepening connection between human and Andromedan were yet to be fully understood, and the consequences could reshape the very fabric of galactic society. As Carl and Belle explored their newfound connection, they knew they were on the cusp of something revolutionary. In the days that followed, Carl and Belle threw themselves into intense preparation for the upcoming public demonstration. They spent countless hours in the lab with Dr. Zylana and Dr. Zorax, pushing the limits of their enhanced abilities and fine-tuning their control. During one particularly grueling session, Carl found himself navigating a holographic obstacle course. As he leaped over virtual barriers and ducked under swinging projectiles, he felt a sudden surge of awareness. Without turning his head, he knew exactly where Belle was standing behind him. "Belle," he called out, "think of a number between 1 and 100. "Okay," she replied, her voice curious. Carl closed his eyes, focusing on the strange sensation in his mind. 73, he said confidently. Belle gasped. That's exactly right. How did you know?" Dr. Zorax's eyes widened as he furiously tapped notes into his datapad. "Fascinating. It appears your mental connection has evolved into a form of limited telepathy. This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies communication." Over the next few days, Carl and Belle honed this new ability. They discovered they could share not just thoughts, but also emotions and sensory impressions. Their movements became perfectly synchronized, each anticipating the other's actions with uncanny precision. As the day of the demonstration approached, the atmosphere in the diplomatic complex grew increasingly tense. Supporters and opponents of human Andromedan relations gathered in large numbers, their heated debates echoing through the corridors. On the morning of the event, Carl and Bell stood in a preparation room, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. Suddenly, an aide burst through the door, his face pale with urgency. "We've received intelligence reports," he panted. "Krell and a group of anti-human extremists are planning to sabotage the demonstration. They've smuggled in an electromagnetic pulse device." Carl's mind focused as he processed the information. He turned to Bell, their eyes meeting in silent communication. They both knew the stakes were too high to back down now. As they entered the demonstration arena, the roar of the crowd was deafening. Delegates from across the galaxy filled the stands, their diverse forms a testament to the complex tapestry of the Galactic Federation. Carl and Bell began their demonstration with a display of enhanced physical abilities. They sprinted across the arena at impossible speeds, leaped to dizzying heights, and lifted objects that would have strained even the strongest of their unmodified counterparts. As the audience watched in awe, they transitioned to more advanced feats. A holographic maze materialized in the center of the arena, its twisting corridors shifting and changing unpredictably. Carl and Bell entered from opposite sides, their eyes closed. Without a word, they navigated the labyrinth in perfect unison, never hesitating or making a wrong turn. The crowd gasped as they emerged at the center simultaneously, their movements so precisely coordinated it seemed like a choreographed dance. Just as they were preparing for the next phase of their demonstration, the lights in the arena flickered and died. A wave of panicked murmurs swept through the audience as darkness engulfed them. In the chaos, Carl's enhanced senses picked up the sound of hurried footsteps approaching the stage. He reached out mentally to Bell, sharing his awareness of the threat. As Krell and his followers rushed the stage, Carl and Bell moved as one. Despite the darkness, they dodged the attackers with fluid grace, using their superior strength and coordination to subdue them without causing serious harm. The backup power systems hummed to life, bathing the arena in an eerie red glow. The audience fell silent as they saw Carl and Bell standing over the unconscious forms of Krell and his accomplices. In the aftermath of the failed attack, evidence of Krell's extensive conspiracy came to light. Holographic displays around the arena flickered to life, showing intercepted communications and financial transactions that linked Krell to various anti-human factions. The mood in the arena shifted palpably. Delegates who had been skeptical now looked at Carl and Bell with newfound respect and curiosity. Murmurs of support for human Andromedan cooperation rippled through the crowd. As the demonstration concluded, Carl and Bell found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. Delegates from various factions approached them, eager to discuss the implications of their abilities and the potential benefits of closer ties between humans and Andromedans. Amidst the flurry of questions and negotiations, Carl caught sight of Dr. Xylana and Dr. Zorax, huddled in deep conversation with members of the Scientific Council. Their animated gestures and the excited gleam in their eyes suggested a breakthrough in their research. As Carl and Bell navigated the complex web of galactic politics, they knew that the fate of Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation hung in the balance. The final vote of the Security Council loomed on the horizon, promising to reshape the future of both humanity and the Andromedan people. With their deepening bond and newfound abilities, Carl and Bell stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they prepared for the crucial negotiations to come, they knew that their actions in the coming days would have far-reaching consequences for the entire galaxy. As they prepared for the crucial negotiations to come, they knew that their actions in the coming days would have far-reaching consequences for the entire galactic community. The day of the Security Council's final vote arrived with a palpable sense of anticipation. Carl and Bell made their way through the grand corridors of the council chamber, their footsteps echoing in sync. The massive doors swung open, revealing a vast circular room filled with delegates from across the galaxy. As they took their places, Carl felt a surge of nervous energy coursing through him. He reached out to Bell through their mental link, finding comfort in her calming presence. The chamber buzzed with hushed conversations, a cacophony of alien languages blending into a low hum. The council chairperson, a towering Xylothian with iridescent skin, called the session to order. We are gathered here today for the final vote on Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation, they announced, their voice reverberating through the chamber. Before we proceed, we will allow for final statements. Carl stepped forward, his skin beginning to emit a soft glow that matched Bell's radiance. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Esteemed members of the Council, he began, his voice steady and clear. We stand at a crossroads of history. The decision you make today will shape the future not just of humanity, but of all sentient beings in our galaxy. As he spoke, Carl felt Bell's presence beside him, their movements perfectly synchronized. He continued, passion infusing his words. The bond between humans and Andromedans is more than just a scientific curiosity. It represents the boundless potential of cooperation and understanding between different species. Bell joined him, their voices blending seamlessly. Together, we have discovered abilities that neither of our species possessed alone. Imagine what other revelations await us if we open our hearts and minds to true interstellar cooperation. As they concluded their speech, Dr. Zylana and Dr. Zorax approached the central podium. The Andromedan scientist's scales shimmered with excitement as she activated a holographic display. Honorable Council members, Dr. Zylana began, our latest research has revealed astonishing developments in the human-Andromedan genetic bond. The hologram shifted, showing complex molecular structures and brain scans. Compatible pairs have demonstrated remarkable advancements in problem-solving and empathy. Dr. Zorax stepped forward, his tentacles gesticulating enthusiastically. Most incredibly, we've observed the emergence of an ability previously thought impossible for both species, the perception and navigation of higher dimensions. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the chamber. Carl and Bell exchanged a glance, their own surprise mirroring that of the delegates. The council chairperson leaned forward, their crystalline eyes gleaming with interest. Can you elaborate on the implications of this discovery? Dr. Zylana nodded. This ability could revolutionize our understanding of the universe. It has potential applications in fields ranging from medicine to space exploration. The possibilities are, quite literally, multidimensional. As the scientists concluded their presentation, the chamber erupted into animated discussions. Carl observed the delegates, noting the shift in their demeanor. Where there had been skepticism and caution, he now saw excitement and curiosity. The council retreated for deliberations, leaving Carl, Bell, and the assembled delegates in suspense. Minutes stretched into hours as they waited for the decision that would shape the future of galactic relations. Finally, the council members filed back into the chamber. The chairperson took their place at the central podium, their expression unreadable. After careful consideration of all evidence and testimony, they announced, we will now proceed with the vote on Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation. Carl held his breath as the voting process began. One by one, each council member registered their decision. The chamber was silent save for the soft hum of the voting terminals. As the last vote was cast, the chairperson's aide approached with the results. The tension in the room was palpable as the chairperson reviewed the data. By an overwhelming majority, they declared, their voice ringing out, the Security Council approves Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation. The chamber erupted in cheers. Carl turned to Bell, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared joy and disbelief. As they embraced, their glows intensified, merging into a dazzling display of light that left the assembled delegates awestruck. In that moment, as their combined radiance illuminated the chamber, Carl and Bell knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to change, and they would be at the forefront of a new era of interstellar cooperation and discovery. As the celebrations continued around them, Carl and Bell's thoughts turned to the future. The human Andromedan cultural exchange program they had envisioned was now a real possibility. They could already imagine thousands of volunteers, both human and Andromedan, eager to explore the potential of their compatibility. The chamber doors opened, and a flood of reporters and dignitaries poured in, all clamoring for a statement from the pair who had become the face of this historic moment. Carl and Bell stood together, ready to address the galaxy and usher in a new age of unity and exploration.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, I liked the story, and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.